Texas football is up to number 2 in the AP poll following a 31-12 beatdown of the defending national champions at the Big House, while Texas Volleyball unveiled its championship banner on Thursday, only to be upset by unranked Miami on Saturday, and the NFL delivered an action-packed Week 1 as always. All this and more on College Press Box.
Good evening, and welcome to the first episode of College Press Box of Fall 2024. I'm Debanny Cerda, and he's Ryan Hopper. We have a lot of catching up to do, but before we start, I want to share with you that today's show is brought to you by Cap Metro, Austin's transit system. We connect you from work, school, play, everywhere in between. Plan your ride at this weekend's game at capmetro.org.
Well, this past Saturday, Texas football looked to once again have another massive non-conference road victory in the Sarkisian era. This time, the eyes of Texas were set on the Big House, Michigan Stadium, home of the defending national champion Michigan Wolverines. Let's take a look at the highlights from this past Saturday. Picking up late in the first, Ewers steps up in the pocket to find his tight end Gunnar Helm in the center of the end zone. 7-0 Texas. Michigan would get a field goal on the ensuing possession, but Texas would respond with this dump down to Contravion Weisner, putting the Horns in the red zone. Then, only plays later, Ewers would give it off to the true freshman Jarrett Gibson, trucking his way into the end zone, 14-3 for the Longhorn lead. The Wolverines looked to respond on the next drive, but the pass is tipped and intercepted. The Clemson transfer, Andrew Makuba, with the interception. That would give the Longhorns a short field, but they would only get a field goal back to Michigan. Loveland over the middle. He fumbled. Inexplicable fumble with no contact around him. That would give the Longhorns yet another short field, as you can see here. No one around him. He just coughed up that football. And this would allow Texas to strike before halftime. This is another swing pass to Jaden Blue. He faked that boy out of his shoes on his way inside the red zone. Then Ewers rolling to his side, and he's going to find the Houston transfer, Matthew Golden. That's a 5-yard touchdown. 24-3 Horns at the half. Michigan will get a field goal after, but then it's a reverse play to the speedy true freshman Ryan Wingo, showing off the wheels. He almost goes all the way, taking it inside the 5-yard line. And then a few plays later, Ewers, another running back swing pass, and this time Jaden Blue would find pay dirt. 31-6 Longhorns. Michigan would get a consolation touchdown, but that was all she wrote, folks. 31-12. Taking the Longhorns up to number 2 in the AP poll. TSTV Sports' Ikey Kohler had the incredible opportunity to travel to Ann Arbor to cover this highly anticipated matchup, and even got to speak to some Michigan students prior to Saturday's contest. Let's see what they had to say.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of people from Texas? What do you think, good or bad?
I think when I just hear Texas, I just think of the Longhorn, the cow. But when I think of a Texan, I think of the cowboy hats, like 2 pistols, just guns blazing,
I think of loud, annoying rednecks, guys in hats like that, yelling, hee-hawing, always talking about their state. I think, very patriotic about being from Texas.
Matthew McConaughey. Gosh, okay.
Cowboy hat and the accent.
The accent, yeah. Okay. What about you?
Same thing. Cowboy hat, cowboy boots.
I have a very Texas personality, I feel. I feel like it definitely is something you can tell.
Who wins in a fight, Bevo or the Wolverine?
The Wolverine for sure. Bevo's slow. He doesn't have that agility. Wolverine, he's quick. He's going to get in there. He's going to be like Josiah Stewart coming off the edge on Saturday. He's ferocious. He's going to get there.
See, the Wolverine, it's small, but it's mighty.
Small but mighty.
So we can take down anything.
I gotta say Bevo. He can stomp the Wolverine, but...
Man, because technically the Wolverine's not really real. So I think what's his name, Bevo? Bevo would probably win that.
I don't know. I've never actually seen a real Wolverine. So, the Wolverine destroyed.
Now joining us is Justin Goosman to fill us in more on what happened this past Saturday. How are you today, Justin?
I'm doing great. It's great to be back in the studio breaking down some Texas football after one of the more impressive wins of the Sarkisian era.
Certainly, certainly. Now, going into an opposing team's stadium and beating them in the way the Longhorns did on Saturday is very rare in college football. What most impressed you about the win?
Yeah, Ryan, I was really looking forward to seeing how the Texas offense would handle the pressure of a big road environment with new weapons, chemistry a little off. And not only did they handle the pressure, but they absolutely dominated Michigan on Saturday. Quinn Ewers looked sharp, but I was extremely impressed with the rushing attack. Jaden Blue was hobbled early, and although he pushed through and was able to finish the game, Jarrett Gibson and Trey Wisner looked great out of the backfield. Wisner, Gibson, and Blue combined for 144 yards from scrimmage. Not a ton, but they really controlled the game. And a true running back by committee approach, and that should ease a lot of concerns for Texas fans. I also thought the offense handled adversity really well early on. A few penalties putting them behind the chains early, but some huge third down conversions throughout the first half in a plethora of situations. The Horns looked comfortable on third and short, medium, and long. The moment never appeared too big for them. And Quinn's poise and leadership really shined through early on in this game, but throughout the entirety of it.
Definitely. I mean, I can think of that early 3rd and 13 on the first drive, step back like it was nothing, delivered a strike to Bond. Very composed. So entering year 3 of the Sarkisian era now, Ewers looking real sharp, unfazed, as you said, to start the season. What has impressed you the most from Quinn? And can Texas fans start thinking about a Ewers Heisman?
I'll get to that in a minute. I think what's impressed me the most is just his all-around comfortability in the offense and on the field in general. It feels like Quinn knows the offense like the back of his hand at this point, and every throw is in his bag. One thing he's really continued to work on is the footwork. Ewers had multiple throws on Saturday and in last week's game against Colorado State where he had to step up, maneuver around the pocket, and make throws under duress, delivering them almost all of them. Even after losing most of his receiving core last season, Ewers looks like he's got good chemistry with the group of guys on the field right now and hasn't missed a beat to start the season. As far as Heisman talk, Ewers is going to have to continue to play at an elite level throughout the course of the season. It's hard to compete with the flash of a Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter, but winning is going to speak for itself, and Ewers has a great chance to win the toughest conference in college football. If he stays healthy and can manage a one-loss regular season with an SEC championship, I think it's safe to say Ewers will have himself a spot reserved in New York as a Heisman Trophy finalist. And it's not at all a stretch to say he could be Texas's first Heisman winner since Ricky Williams.
That certainly would be something, Justin. Now, after 2 dominant wins for the Horns, where do your expectations sit with this squad?
Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This season is playoffs or bust. With an expanded format, anything outside of the top 12 is unacceptable. To go a step further, if Texas isn't playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for an SEC championship at the end of the year, I would also label this season a failure. Texas has all the talent to win a national championship, and although, like I said earlier, the SEC is the toughest conference in college football, Texas easily has a top 2 roster in the conference, if not the best. We all know Sark loves talking about culture, and what's better for a culture than walking into the SEC and winning an SEC championship your first season in the conference. Lastly, Texas has to win the Red River rivalry game this season. A loss would put Sark at 1-3 all time in the game, and we all know that Longhorn legacies are defined by that game. The Horns can afford a loss early on in the schedule, but they absolutely cannot afford to lose to OU for the 3rd time in 4 years. With the only win coming against a squad with a QB situation so bad they had to run a wildcat offense. It's a tall task for the Horns this season with lots of expectations, but with the standard that Sarkisian set last year, these are the expectations that come with it. For this season to be deemed a success, Texas has to be in the playoff, competing for an SEC championship, and take down Oklahoma at the Cotton Bowl.
Well, it was a pleasure as always, Justin. We thank you for your analysis. When we return to College Press Box, Texas Volleyball opened up Greg Gym for the first home contest this season. Campbell Choate enlightens us on what was a hectic past week for Texas Volleyball. Stay with us on College Press Box.
Welcome back to College Press Box. The back-to-back national champions are swinging into action as the season has finally begun. Despite finishing the season on top, it's been a rocky start for the Longhorns as they've dropped 2 matches out of the 4 they've played thus far. Our very own Campbell Choate is here to join us to break down Texas Volleyball and a little more in depth. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Texas Volleyball has had a rough weekend, but I guess I'm doing better than they are.
There we go. So starting us off, Texas starting lineup looks a little bit different than last year's national championship team, with a few transfers and redshirt players added to the roster. Looking at the starting 6, who do you have your eyes on?
Yeah, you can't watch this team without immediately seeing how huge of a presence Mariana Singleton has on the court. Singleton had pretty big shoes to fill after Asia O'Neal graduated, but she's proven in just 4 games that she can rise to the occasion. Singletary is a redshirt sophomore, so she's had time to develop and observe the standard Texas Volleyball holds their program to. Take Singletary's blocks, for example. You can see that they speak for themselves. Now, if you thought O'Neal ate up everything along the net, Singletary is almost identical. Not only is she able to read swings well enough to nail some solo blocks, what I'm most impressed with is her ability to work with her teammates along the net. If you look closely at her blocks with Reagan Rutherford, there is no room for a ball to go through the 2 of them. Singletary positions herself well to the right side or outside hitter, and the angle of her hands is nearly always on point. Singletary leads Texas with 21 blocks, and the next thing you can't miss about her is that slide. This slide has been one of the most aggressive parts of Texas's offense all season long. She's unblockable and undiggable. Singletary's approach is difficult to read with how quick she gets to the right side of the setter, and this just makes for a great play for head coach Jarrett Elliott to have in his back pocket. Now, I brought her up earlier, but one of the best additions to Texas' roster is Reagan Rutherford. Now, Rutherford transferred from Kentucky after 4 seasons playing for the Wildcats, and she was on that national championship winning team. Best way to describe Rutherford? She plays like a national champion. Rutherford has the perfect balance of aggression and control at the net. She's also a lefty, making her cross shots carry the most power. And you can tell that she can see right through a defense based on how well she uses her line shot. Going down the right side of the line is much harder for lefties, but her spin is nearly perfect and she reserves it for only when needed. Rutherford clocked in 14 kills against Wisconsin, with 38 kills overall this season. With Rutherford on the right side and Madison Skinner outside, Texas has a chance to absolutely dominate their opponent's defense.
I like how you brought those 2 up, because you had Mariana learn from the slide queen herself, Asia O'Neal, so it really puts them in together to just learn offensively. And Rutherford, she was on the national championship with Madison Skinner, so both of them combined and just having that chemistry brings their offense to such a higher elite level. Now, Texas's record currently sits at 2-2, and their ranking was originally number 1, as we all know, but it dropped to 6 after dropping those 2 matches. What issues are you seeing on the court that led them to the Longhorns' first unranked match at home since 2014?
Yeah, first, Miami consistently penetrated Texas' weak spots on the court. They went after as many seams as possible and targeted hitters on the back row time after time, which that's how you play the game. Miami had a great performance, but the issues Texas had against them are something they can expect to see with every single team they play. The biggest issues I saw was a lack of consistency, a loss of momentum, and a lack of communication. Luckily, these are all solvable issues. Texas was their own worst enemy last Saturday, and the Longhorns had 31 hitting errors compared to 57 kills. Skinner had 14 errors on 58 swings. This is a common theme across the board. Now let's take a look at the last few points of the 5th and final set. First up, we're going to see Texas has the opportunity to tie it up, and you're going to see the score go back and forth a lot throughout the game, but instead we're going to see a misread block and a swing that goes right into it from Jenna Winnis. Next, Miami's serve is going to target Jenna Winnis, which is expected when you're going to put a back row hitter on the back row, but it comes as a shock between the seam between Akana and Winnis. Then we're going to see one of those hitting errors where clean play is more crucial than anything. Texas is going to come back within 2 points of Miami, and there's another wide open seam. Miami's going to end the game with the final kill to win.
So something that you mentioned was they went to 5 sets with Miami. Their other loss was against Minnesota, Jenna Winnis' former team, and it also went to 5 sets. And the thing is, when Winnis really gets in her head, that's when teams naturally go for it. And Miami did their film research because that's exactly what they did. Texas had a on and off again season so far, but their big win against number 3 Wisconsin, another addition to the win column against Indiana, and losses to Minnesota and Miami, like I mentioned. Is it time for the alarm bells to start going on? It's still pretty early on in the season, and they were 2-2 last year. So what's going on?
Yeah, is it a little concerning when a back-to-back national championship winning team is losing to an unranked team at home? Yeah, but I mean, honestly, I'm not stressed. If you were to look at last season, like you said, they're in a similar spot. Texas started off their season with a loss to unranked Long Beach State as the returning national champions. Now, a few games later, the Longhorns will lose to the then number 2 Stanford and number 11 Washington. Now, I'm sure that losses to 2 huge teams caused some anxiety among the team, but look how the season ended. This team knows how to adjust, and luckily it's early in the season, like you said. And like I said earlier, there's some new additions to the starting 6, and that's going to take some time for players to figure out where each player's limits lie. Over the past 4 games, Texas had 4 players on the starting roster that are brand new to starting at Texas. I mean, that's just some impressive recruiting. But Texas is working with 3 different setters, and while I think that's going to be a huge advantage for Texas later on, it's going to take some time to figure out each setter's style and if Coach Elliott wants to play in their different strengths or create uniformity. Now, looking ahead, Texas will face Houston, Stanford, and Baylor, and those are some teams they've played in previous seasons. So if those end up badly, then I guess we can start to have some alarm bells going off.
Yeah, no, it's funny how you mentioned that they have 4 new complete starters. And I mean, you have Aiden Ames, who's a freshman, just coming in and really attacking that middle, because you had Asia O'Neal up there for like 7 years. So transitioning to that, it's going to be a little difficult. Don't think any alarm bell should going off. Thank you so much for that valuable insight, Campbell. When we return, Grabiel Silva joins us to talk about week 1 of the NFL season and what to expect in 2024. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome back to College Press Box. I'm joined alongside Grabiel Silva to talk about the crazy weekend slate of games that saw many close games, but also a few blowouts. How you doing, Grabiel?
I'm doing good, Ryan. You know, it's the best time of year. The weather is starting to get cooler, and the NFL is finally back. I can't wait to see how this season plays out.
I couldn't agree more, especially with the weather part. Well, I'll start with the contenders. It seems like the Chiefs, Bills, Eagles, and Lions all won this weekend. Which Super Bowl hopeful impressed you the most with its Week 1 performance?
Well, you're right. There are a few favorites to win this year's Super Bowl, but to me, the favorite has to be the back-to-back defending champion, Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, led by superstar Patrick Mahomes, had a big-time matchup against the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday night. The Ravens, as you remember, kept it close against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, but could not get over the hump. Thursday's game had everything you could have wanted with a great back-and-forth matchup, and the Ravens literally missing the game-tying touchdown by a toe. I was impressed with the way the Chiefs looked Thursday night. Mahomes performed excellently by throwing for 291 yards and 1 touchdown. Rookie first-round draft pick Xavier Worthy proved to be a great pickup for the Chiefs as he had the ball in his hands 3 times and scored in 2 of them. Another weapon was Rashee Rice as he had 7 catches for 103 yards. In addition to the performance by the offense, the defense was flying around and giving reigning MVP Lamar Jackson problems all night long. Now moving on to other contenders, the 49ers have a big Monday night matchup against the Jets, and depending on how they look, they might have a run at trying to dethrone the Chiefs yet again in the Super Bowl. The Ravens, who we mentioned earlier, still have some things to figure out to knock off the Chiefs. Lamar and Isaiah Likely look like some bright spots, but other receivers on the team were having trouble getting open all night long. For my final contender, I'd have to say the Detroit Lions. They had an excellent, hard-nosed football game Sunday night against the Los Angeles Rams. The Lions look like one of the most complete teams, along with the Chiefs, this past weekend, and they were so close to a Super Bowl berth last year that I think they'll use that as motivation to get over the hump this year.
Now, with the positive always comes the negative. What team or player are you disappointed the most in this weekend?
There was definitely a few disappointing performances on Sunday. It's just the beginning of the season. But to me, the biggest letdown was quarterback Joe Burrow. Not just because he's on one of my fantasy teams, but he really looked rusty after being out for some time last year. He had no touchdown passes and could not lead the Bengals to a win over Jacoby Brissett-led Patriots team. Usually, Burrow starts off slow year after year, but how long his slow start takes might cost the Bengals at the end of the season when they're fighting for a playoff spot. A team that disappointed me was the Atlanta Falcons. After supposedly finding their franchise quarterback in Kirk Cousins, the opener was full of high expectations, but they fell flat on their faces by only scoring 10 points and losing to a Justin Fields-led Steelers team. Cousins, who's coming off an Achilles injury, had 2 interceptions and only threw for 155 yards. That is not going to cut it for the amount of money that Atlanta is paying him to go out there and play. The Falcons do have the pieces to put together a division championship, but they will need to figure it out sooner rather than later. One last disappointing performance for me was number 1 pick Caleb Williams. He told his punter before the season that he wouldn't be needing to punt much. And I know it was his first career start, but he threw for only 93 yards, and his punter had more punt yards than they had total yards on offense, I believe. This is not a good showing for the Bears as they look ahead to the Sunday night matchup against the Texans, who also struggled, but they still won against the Colts on Sunday. The season is still young, and shaky starts are expected, but if some of these performances keep up, it could be a problem for some of these teams with high expectations.
Well, with your Caleb Williams take, you led me right into my third question. This weekend, we saw the first career starts of number 1 and number 2 overall picks, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, but also quite a few other quarterbacks playing for new teams. What quarterback adapting to his new team played the best, in your opinion, this weekend?
Well, like you said, it is week 1, but to me, the most impressive performance was by Jaden Daniels. The rookie showed his dual threat abilities with 184 passing yards and 88 yards on the ground, while also scoring 2 rushing touchdowns. He did a good job not throwing any interceptions, but the ball would slip out of his hand often, and when he runs the ball, he needs to learn to slide to protect his body, because too many of these NFL hits will shorten his career, as we saw with RG3. Another QB on a new team that caught my eye was surprisingly Sam Darnold. He threw for over 200 yards and had 2 touchdowns. Although he did face a weaker opponent in the New York Giants, Darnold was fighting for the Vikings starting job before top 10 pick J.J. McCarthy went down for the season with an injury. Although there was a record 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round, it's still early to judge how they will turn out for the remainder of the season. Caleb Williams will presumably bounce back. Daniels has to build on his performance. Bo Nix is going to need some work, and Drake May and Michael Penix are still waiting their turn. The NFL season is a long one, and these rookies will need to build off of each game in order for us to accurately judge them as a whole.
We really appreciate that, Grabiel, and look forward to an amazing 2024 NFL season. When we return to College Press Box, we'll take a look at the past week in Longhorn sports. Stick around with us on College Press Box. Welcome back in the College Press Box. Now let's take a quick look back at this past week in Longhorn sports. This past Thursday, the Texas women's soccer team defeated San Diego State 3-1, marking head coach Angela Kelly's 300th career win. The Longhorns have remained undefeated at Mike Myers Stadium through the first 5 matches thus far.
Cross-country runner Olivia Howell won SEC Runner of the Week, which is the first weekly award as a Longhorn. Howell, a grad student, led the Longhorns to win the Stormy Seas Open 5K with a time of 17 minutes and 15.2 seconds, and is also the UT outdoor record holder in the 1500.
Last week, Texas women's golf was selected number 2 in the Golf Channel preseason team. Among the selection, 3 Longhorns earned preseason All-Americans. Farrah O'Keefe, Lauren Kim earned second team, while Cindy Sue earned honorable mention. Taking a look ahead at this week in Longhorn sports.
On Wednesday, September 11th, volleyball versus Houston at 9 p.m. on ESPN2. Thursday, on September 12th, women's soccer versus Houston Christian at 7 p.m. on ESPN+. On Saturday, on the 14th, football versus UTSA at 6 p.m. on ESPN. That'll wrap things up for this edition of College Press Box. Make sure to tune into our other shows this week, including College Crossfire on Wednesdays airing at 9 p.m. and the 1-0 Sports Show on Friday, now at 11 a.m. Thank you to our analysts, everyone in Master Control, our executive producer Joe Duffy, and everyone else at TSTV. I'm Debanny Cerda, he's Ryan Hopper. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful night.